beautiful stars. Welcome to another week of the Millennial Mystics. Hi, Steph.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, so excited to see you today on the full moon in Libra. Today, we're going to talk about this full moon in Libra, Pluto in Aquarius, Mars in Cancer, possibly, social media, and all the things that have been going on with our lives up to date.
It has been a wild time.
A wild time, yes. So, do you want to start with the full moon in Libra? How do you feel about this full moon?
It's interesting because I wrote my full moon horoscopes and I was a little doom and gloom about it, if I'm being honest. And I'm not always like that. Usually I'm like posy vibes, but there's a Chiron Kazemi that's taking place in the middle of this full moon. And while there is massive potential for change and healing to take place, I also think because oppositions are the nature of Saturn and they have those, more difficult, challenging, rejection, those kinds of feelings associated with it, I feel like it will be triggering in some way.
Mm. I just did a TikTok video about this full moon and I had the same. I'm so glad we're on the same page because I had the same vibes about it. This Libra moon is opposing all of this stuff, all the stellium in Aries. And we have an exalted sun. We have it next to Chiron. And then we have Jupiter. And it feels very stressful to a Libra moon, I have to say.
Yeah. And the moon opposite Jupiter, I've just noticed from tracking my own transits, anytime the moon is opposite Jupiter, it's like big feelings, whatever you've been like holding within erupts. So, yeah, it doesn't feel like a quiet moon. I think it's ruled by Venus in Taurus, which is beautiful. That's a saving grace. But yeah, I would just say like if you did experience or you are experiencing more of a intense moment under this full moon, you're not alone.
Mhm. I definitely agree. I think this is the time to rest your mind because ultimately this moon is in an air sign. So it's all about your thoughts about your relationships. And I do believe that this little pause is setting us up for eclipse season, which is going to start in 2 weeks. And your Aries and Libra houses and areas of your life are going to start to get activated and have faded endings and beginnings. So I really do feel like this opening, this full moon, is a chance for healing your relationships. And if you follow me on Instagram, I just shared a post yesterday, which was I was literally crying as I was like writing it.
I cried reading it.
Because it was this realization, and full moons are illuminations. You realize something, you see something very clearly. And while I feel like I'm kind of at the tail end of healing my relationship with my parents, I do think it's a beginning in a different way in how I relate to them and also my other relationships in my life, because our parents are literally the first people we have a
Mhm.
model from, right? So I just wrote that, and with Chiron, with the sun, just illuminating all of the wounding around the wounds around independence, the wounds around these codependent relationships that you sometimes get into because of your wounds as a child. So, yeah, it was it felt very sad, but kind of in this like um, positive way, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. That feels like the perfect way to describe this full moon is like sad, but in a positive way. That is Chiron energy, and being in the heart of the sun, Chiron's influence is just amplified, but also renewed. So this could mark, even a new journey with the new beginning when it comes to our healing or our wounding in some way.
Yeah, and when you said that oppositions are the nature of Saturn, I find it interesting because Chiron's dad was Saturn, and he was a product of a sexual assault. So he very much felt rejected by his parents, because then Saturn went on to find his other children to eat them.
Right. Yeah.
And then his mother turned back into a nymph and like rejected Chiron because he was, you know, a child of this assault. So he felt rejected and he felt unwanted. And I think a lot of us feel that way sometimes in relation to others. And that all kinds of comes up to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like my full moon story is still unfolding. You know, we're midway through the day. It perfects later this evening. So, I'm just waiting to see what else comes through. But for me, it's in my third and my ninth houses. So that is the axis of information, but also skills and broadcasting and putting yourself out there. And Laura and I have some very exciting episodes coming up for you. And I've been working away on trying to learn how to pick up video editing skills. And we're wearing a lot of different hats. And I feel like that is a big piece of this full moon story for me, like believing in myself and working. That's the pain piece is I've always been too scared to use my voice. I have literally said, I'll never launch a podcast. I would literally rather die. Like that's what I've always said. And now I have a daily horoscope podcast. So it pushing through those pains and past traumas and really trying to put myself out there. That's been illuminated under this full moon.
Which is so beautiful because I do believe the exalted sun in Aries with Chiron and Jupiter is believing in yourself and really activating that energy of pioneering something that you've never done before. So
Absolutely.
that is your story. That's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you for making it clear. I hadn't even think about it like that.
Yeah, because Aries is your ninth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like believing in your, because I believe the ninth house is about your beliefs, believing in yourself, and being able to know that you're the authority in the particular area of your expertise, which is astrology, which also rules the ninth house.
Oh my gosh. Look at that. Boom.
Here
Boom,
we
boom,
go.
boom.
Here we go.
Everyone needs an astrologer. No, astrologers need astrologers. That's the real truth.
And that's what I love about our relationship is that you'll always text me and be like, Laura, you're just doing the best Mars and Cancer that you're doing. You know?
Yes, yes.
So much validation.
It's a whole other language. So it's so beautiful to share it with you.
Yes. Speaking of Mars and Cancer, we were just sharing a little bit about what we've been going through with that transit. Me personally, I have it going through my eighth, and I was sharing with Stephanie that I was up for, I guess, competition, right, against another astrologer for a brand deal. And I found out how much this astrologer was being offered and what I was being offered were different amounts. And it's because the other astrologer has a bigger social media presence, and they value us based on that these days, based on our social currency, which is so Pluto in Aquarius, right? And I think the Laura a year ago would have felt really terrible about that. I would have been like, well, why aren't I as worthy, or why aren't I as worth that much? And I realized that, well, I was just posing questions for myself. Why is it that somebody who has a blue check and who has a larger following, even more valuable than me, it's not?
Right.
All of these currencies are so fake, arbitrary. Thank you. That's the perfect word I was looking for. And as long as I believe in myself and I believe in my own journey and what I have to offer, then it's really like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Even though you should advocate for yourself in getting paid what you are worth, these scales of worthiness that we are marked on these days, like Forbes 30 under 30 and these blue checks and all that stuff, it's like all dumb. It's all fake.
Yeah. The
now
blue.
you can just buy it.
Right. The blue checks. That was something we really wanted to talk about. So for anyone who is unaware, Instagram Meta just came out, I think maybe like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, saying that you can basically purchase verification on the app at $14.99 to Zuck. a month, and which is $180 a year, because yes, my Virgo moon in the second house calculated it. You can be verified too. And I think for a lot of people, especially astrologers and people in the spiritual space, for years now, I don't know how long, definitely when Jupiter and Neptune were co-present together in Pisces, I feel is like when it really blew up, but there was all of these scammer accounts. So it's a big deal, and it's something that most of us have been fighting for and, you know, applying relentlessly for verification, because all of these scammer accounts are stealing our content, they're contacting our followers, they're stealing their money, they're giving, you know, on the premise of like a fake reading. And yeah, I have a lot of feelings about it.
Well, how do you, because the moment that I saw it, I texted you and I was like, fucking Zuckerberg.
Yeah. So I will just admit that like my entire existence on Instagram, so I started really building my account in January of 2018, and I went full throttle until October of 2019, when I had a job at a place that I won't say a lot about. But yeah, I kind of like pushed my personal brand to the side. All I wanted was a blue check mark. Still, all I want is a blue check mark. I'm a Leo. I would die for a blue check mark, you know, like I would love that acknowledgement. And it, you know, for a long time, it felt so exclusive. It felt so cool. And even though had all of these opportunities and successes that I was grateful for on a piece of paper, I still was like yearning for that blue check mark. And I'm like, oh, I haven't made it until I get verified, you know? And now that you can buy one, it's the last thing I want. I feel offended, you know, I don't want to have to, like you've said, pay for my protection from all of these other scammer accounts. I just think it's unethical.
And it
Yeah.
also dilutes it.
It was.
I feel like it dilutes the meaning of it.
Yes.
Because then anybody could be an expert in their field. From what I gained about the blue check, which I also wanted a blue check, is that you're an expert in this field or wherever whatever industry or space, and nobody can copy your identity. It's for protection. And I honestly think that Meta has allowed these scammer accounts to go on for a reason. I think they were behind it, kind of like how they were behind some bots a couple of years ago in the election. And I think they offered it to our community first as a way to say like, hey, this is the way you could protect yourself. And it's such an abusive relationship. And if you've been in one, you know the signs. It's like, let me give you protection for a fee. And it's like, you should be doing that anyway. You're a community. You're supposed to create a safe space. You're not supposed to make me pay for it.
Yeah. I think
That's how I felt.
I think you're absolutely right. I think they did have part in just letting it go on and on and on, right? Like, you can't figure this out. You guys can't solve this, really? I don't know.
Yeah. And does it make you feel you want to invest more in that space, or kind of maybe invest your time in other spaces, which we are. We're building our YouTube and
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I think maybe it's been more an unconscious shift, but now that your Jupiter in the 12th is making it conscious for me. I have been divesting in Instagram, and I've been showing up on YouTube and on podcasts, and I want more control of my content, you know, places where I know that eventually I'll be paid on YouTube when I hit a certain amount of views and followers. And I know Instagram pays for reels, but it's
but I don't even think they do that anymore. I think they cut their yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it does. I mean, like you said, anyone can get a blue check mark. And I actually I don't understand it. I don't understand what the point of it is. If I could make a profile tomorrow and, you know, use someone's famous name and then apply for a blue check mark, what's the point of the blue check mark? I'm a fake person, you know? I don't
And
know.
did you send me something about Twitter, how they just suspended their program?
So Twitter removed the New York Times blue check mark, which I think
Oh,
is really, really concerning. All of this, we're talking about the blue check mark in relation to Pluto and Aquarius. I think, you know, Aquarius is technology, community, social communities through technology. And Pluto is that planet of upheaval and first like facing the shadow and like the dark, the power, you know, power hungry people before that beautiful alchemy takes place. And I think since we are obviously in the very, very beginning stages of this 20-year long plus journey, we're just starting to see these themes emerge where it's like, well, if you pay us, you can be verified. And I think what's happening on Twitter is like way more harmful, and you know, is gonna create more fake news and misinformation, and it's very dangerous.
Mhm. I was editing our first episode of the show that was formerly named The Witching Hour, and you predicted, and that was 6 months ago, and you predicted in that video, you were like, I cannot wait until March. Well, you didn't say I cannot wait. You said I'm surprised. I'm curious about March when all of this happens. What's going to happen with technology? And in those couple of weeks since Pluto entered Aquarius, we have the pending TikTok ban.
Mm-hmm.
We have this thing with Meta, now Twitter, and it just seems like the technocrats are holding on to their power with a kung fu grip.
Yes, and yesterday, Elon changed the Twitter logo to I don't know anything about cryptocurrency, but Dogecoin,
Doja Cat, Doja Coin.
I wish. It's the one that's a little dog. That's a Shiba
Yeah,
Inu. It's cute dogs. But that's the
really?
logo now. And I'm
I
like,
didn't see
oh,
that. Is that a bird?
it was a bird. Yeah,
Yeah.
but now he's using this cryptocurrencies logo as Twitter's logo. And it just feels like the power is in the wrong person's hands. It feels scary to me.
Yeah. So do you lean more towards the dystopian aspects of the Pluto and Aquarius like everybody's talking about?
I think we're going to have a little dystopian moment for a while. And
Are we
then
not there yet?
I think it's gonna get worse, maybe for a little bit. And then my Leo sun is optimistic. I am very hopeful that you know, we'll make progress and the people we will gather together in some way and hopefully fight back for the power in many, many different arenas.
Yes. Well, my Libra stellium it believes in justice. So I already see, well, also I have to keep thinking back of this Adrienne Marie Brown quote where she says, things aren't getting worse, they're just being revealed. So we're
Mm.
just seeing the like things that have been hidden through Pluto and Capricorn coming to
Yeah.
the surface all at once. And we're all being aware of it. It's like the apocalypse, it's like the lifting of the veil. And so it seems worse than I think it actually is.
That's I like that. Yeah.
I can't help it. I'm ruled by Jupiter. I'm super optimistic. I'm all about seeing the half glass full kind of thing.
That
So
is what I love about you. And I think it's just important to notice that it's only been, or name that it's only been, what, 4 weeks or so since a lot of these planetary shifts. And look at all of the headlines and the big news that you've just rattled off. Like, this is just also a window. This is a preview. This isn't even the main event, you know? So um, there's more
and
to
I
come.
don't I don't think we realize like how young the internet is because the internet just celebrated its Saturn return.
Yeah.
So it's only like 30 years old,
It can barely rent a car.
right?
Yeah.
So I think like so much has changed in such a short amount of time with technology. We are just beginning to see what it's capable of, like how much of our lives are going to change in the next 30 years.
Well, also, oh my gosh, we haven't even mentioned like the biggest elephant in the room, AI, all the stuff going
Oh,
on with
yes.
AI.
Happening and chat GPT.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Have you explored it with astrology readings?
no,
It's wild.
I've listened to Chris Brennan talk about
Yeah.
it on the astrology podcast and giving specific delineations for aspect patterns. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good.
Yes. I, I've watched I've watched creators on TikTok use Chat GPT to write letters to representatives in Congress. And I was like, that's one way we could use technology for the better.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I know that there's a lot of fear around it, right? Like, are the machines going to replace a lot of our jobs? And I
Yes.
think I think with astrology in particular, there's such an art
Mhm.
and intuition that is required, not required, but that comes with a reading with a human. So I don't feel like we're ultimately going to be in jeopardy of our jobs per se, but I mean, I hope not, but maybe writing horoscopes, that depending on, or certain like generic, like 5 things you need to know about an Aries sun, like that kind of content might be in the past.
I do believe that certain things are going to be eliminated. Like you said, like those Cosmo columns about five uh five characteristics of a Aries. I definitely think that might go away, but I think what's amazing with astrologers specifically is the filter through their own experience and their
Yes.
own perspectives and what they've studied. You can't get that from a machine.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Like I listen to certain astrologers who are some of my favorites, like Sam Reynolds. I know you study with him,
Mhm.
and I just listen to them, and the ways in which they understand astrology can only be through their own lived experiences.
Yeah, yeah. So that is a saving grace for us astrologers. But otherwise, it's really, really making me think about iRobot. Did you ever watch that movie with Will Smith?
Yes, I I I've watched all those movies.
It, I was obsessed with iRobot. I would watch it like every weekend for like 3 years of my life. I don't know what was wrong with me. This is when I was like a preteen. And it scared the bejesus out of me, but I would still watch it. I was like, ooh, ooh, it would give me chills. But I feel like this is starting to unfold. The machines are going to evolve. That was,
If you've ever been to South Korea or Japan, they've already had machines. So the last time I was there was 2017, so 6 years ago. Like they already had all the robots at the airport, at the train stations. They were like 10 years ahead of us in the US. So
mm,
I also think that other countries have already adopted AI and robots in a way that maybe isn't so dystopian yet, but can help with the efficiency of society.
yeah.
I have my Venus and Moon in Aquarius, so I'm an early adopter to technology.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
I
Yeah, but
literally I literally was the first person in my school to have a computer and understand how to use it.
oh my
Um,
God.
and my first DVD that I bought was The Matrix.
Oh my gosh, you cannot get more Aqua Moon Venus than that. That's hilarious. I love that.
Yeah, I'm sorry I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, just that Pluto and Aquarius has been loud. Like it's,
For
the
you,
yeah, for me too. It's opposing me, like Laura reminded me last week. And I've been having so many technology issues, like to the point where I went and got a new phone, brand new phone, because everything just stopped working on my old phone. I couldn't post to Instagram. I had all these elected dates I wanted to, keep on track, and I wasn't working. So I get my new phone and I can't do anything on it. I can't figure out how to send a voice memo. The voice memo button doesn't work. It was shutting off. I didn't even tell you this. It was shutting off by itself yesterday 3 times and then just turning on by itself. I was like, oh, the robot.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm getting affected by this transit, but
Pluto 1, Stephanie 0.
yes, but we're just at the beginning of this fun journey. So we will continue to see how it unfolds.
Yes. And how has Saturn and Pisces been treating you? I just realized that DJT, Mr. Trump, former president of the United States, he was indicted or he was found guilty yesterday. And his Saturn in Pisces was in his eighth house and, well, ingress into his eighth house, which I find interesting because the 34 indictments against him were about him paying off Stormy Daniels. How
Mm.
eighth house could that be?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then I saw his chart because I also want to check his zodiacal releasing just for, studying purposes,
Mhm.
studious purposes. But he has his ascendant conjunct Regulus.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about Regulus before, and Regulus is the star, the fixed star of fame and notoriety, and most like kings and famous people born on Regulus or have Regulus placements have this like major fame moment, but if they don't use their fame for good, it's like their ultimate downfall. And I just can't help but that Pluto squaring his ascendant.
Mm,
I was like, I think this is his ultimate like demise, maybe.
I hope so. I noticed that all of the arraigning yesterday took place during a void moon.
Oh,
In you know, ancient astrology, they talk about how the matter's never complete or it just kind of goes away. So I hope that's not the case,
yes.
but it makes you wonder. But yeah, Saturn and Pisces is also in my eighth. Wah wah. I'm not getting arranged for anything, but I'm just having, a little bit of sad vibes. It's like it's grief. And I don't know if it's just me because it's in my eighth house, but I feel like a lot of other people just feel like an undercurrent of like wah wah, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel want because there's still this like in between moment. I think March was this very confusing month where so many things were changing and the energy was changing, but and now people don't know what to do. People don't know which direction to take. Yeah, this adjustment period.
yeah, yeah. Um, but luckily, Saturn and Pisces isn't really going to stir up much drama for us until I think early March. I can't remember the day in March, but once Venus enters Gemini, it's going to form a square with Saturn and Pisces, and that's we'll be hearing from Saturn again around that time. Because the last time that I remember Saturn and Pisces being so loud was when it was prominently featured in that full moon in Virgo on March 7th. So I feel like since then, like that was so horrible, such a tragic and intense moment for me that now I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this. This is fine. This is better, but we'll see what happens when Saturn kind of steps back into the ring.
Right, because this is the first Venus in Taurus without Saturn, without the square
Mm.
to. So
Yep.
this Taurus feels more grounded and more sensual and more embodied.
Yes. And then we'll be dealing with the Saturn square for the mutable sign. So if you are a Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, or Sagittarius, you're going to feel that interaction a little stronger.
So fun.
Really fun.
It's like I have a mutable rising, but I have uh placements in fixed signs. So it's like and cardinal. So it's like I feel like I never get a little break.
Yes.
Little break from the stars.
No, that's how I feel. I have a fixed sign stellium, a Capricorn stellium, and 2 planets in Virgo. So it's like, someone's always.
Someone someone's always activated.
Yes, yes. Um, but it's been, a a pretty, I'd say, better time in the sky since early March. What about
Yes.
you?
Yeah, and I'm really excited for this little like in between lunation week we have going on because I think the luckiest day is going to be next week on April 11th with the Sun Jupiter conjunction. That looks really nice.
Hmm?
I think that's like a little moment where you can like really wish on the stars and really set an intention. And then we have the second new moon in Aries, which is a solar eclipse. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe this is more mental for me or psychological, but I feel like with eclipses, it just seems something is being burned away. Because I see visually, the moon going over the sun
Mhm.
from our perspective from Earth. And it's like the moon and the sun are like cleansing each other. It's like this new beginning.
Yeah, yeah. That just reminds me, something else I want to say about the full moon in Libra is that this is the final full moon in Libra that isn't an eclipse
Yeah.
until 2025. So if you are using it to manifest, your results might be a little bit more predictable. Not that you can't manifest under eclipses, but the energy is more
How do you feel about that?
I think that we talked about this. I think you absolutely can. And like you said, a lot of different cultures do use eclipses in their spell work and in their practices. So I say do what feels right. I think spiritual practices should be about what feels right to you,
Mm-hmm.
you
Because
know?
it's so controversial. Like, there's some people who are like, fuck no,
Yeah.
no eclipse.
Then don't do it. But I will say one time I was like, I did a spell under an eclipse, one of the Gemini Sagittarius eclipses, and I lit the entire thing behind me on fire.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll just back away from this one.
Yeah, or maybe it was cleansing something. Because you know how a fire burns? There's like
Yep.
an energy there that needs to be purged.
It was for sure powerful. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do believe in the energy, like the primordial energy of chaos. If
Hmm.
you know how to use that energy, it can be a great, like eclipses is like they're fated. They're these moments in time when the universe kind of takes the wheel. And if you know how to use that energy, I think it kind of speeds up a timeline in a way.
Oh yeah. It feels eclipses are like timeline jumping, you know.
Yes.
Hmm.
You're in, I know we don't like to use these terms because of the new age movement, but like the 4D, it's like you're kind of in between the physical and the non-physical realms.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this, and like you said, the upcoming Aries eclipse is going to be at 29 degrees. I think what's really interesting about these two new moon and Aries is that they bookend Aries in the zodiac. The first one that we had on April 21st was at 0 degrees, and the next one that's coming up is at 29. So I almost wonder, like, are those two the bookends of our eclipse stories, like themes that come through on those days, like on the 0 degree Aries moon, whatever happened for us, is that going to be kind of like the beginning of our once the node shift signs? Are we going to be noticing that kind of stuff, that kind of energy and topics? And then the 29 degree, whatever takes place, is that kind of themes related to that? Is that how we're wrapping up our eclipse story in 2025?
Ooh, I like that little like pondering question. I
Hmm.
do wonder because and also what you did on that day and around that day because I feel like what you do and what you think and how you feel really does color the energy that you're going to be in for the eclipse story.
Hmm.
But I do find it interesting whenever you do have two new moons or two full moons in the same sign, it's like the energy in that particular area of your life is going to be even more pronounced and highlighted.
Hmm.
So it's like you kind of have to like take the front seat of your life in that area as like Aries being the pioneer and the person who's independent of their circumstances and 0 and 29 being the bookends. It's like beginning and closing a chapter.
Hmm.
I have to sit with that and think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing's for sure is that the Aries sector of your chart is loud right now, and it's not going to get quiet anytime soon. We still have Jupiter there. So I think until Jupiter enters Taurus on May 16th, we're going to have this more focus and drive and pull towards the Aries section of our chart.
Mhm. Can I share a funny story?
Please.
So on the Aries new moon, I was at an astrology event here in New York City, and it was kind of, I was sharing with you, it's kind of the first time I met other astrologers in person. And I realized there's so much the astrology community that I didn't know beforehand. Like nobody gave me a handbook. Nobody told me like these, you know how people say like when you're going to meet new people, don't ever bring up politics or religion or money or sex. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that the one question you don't ask an astrologer is what house system they use, because it was
Oh yeah.
controversial. I was like, never mind.
Yeah, I am like so on the sidelines of Twitter. I don't tweet, I don't post, but I know that that's like a common area of contention between astrologers is the house system that they use. And I say, pick whatever house you want.
Yes, and what resonates with you. But what I'm finding out as I meet more and more astrologers and asking about their practice is a lot of them do use Placidus. And I guess I started out with Placidus and then moved to whole sign systems, but I don't know why. It's almost like when you ask somebody, are you a blue or a red or Republican or Democrat? It's like that intense. And I had no idea. I
Yeah.
literally had no, I was just curious because I'm curious about people's practice and where they studied, like which lineage they studied.
Mhm.
Like, are you more of a modern astrologer who uses like psychological understandings of the house systems? Or are you a Hellenistic astrologer who uses the house systems in terms of areas of your life?
Totally.
Because I feel like that really does color how you give the message and how you use astrology.
Of course, of course. Yeah. Um, I love a good whole sign house. My Virgo moon is like, keep it simple. But I started with Placidus.
But
Um,
it also does change a lot of things about how you see yourself in your life. Because like my son went from being in the fourth house with Placidus to then the fifth house and whole sign. And the
mhm.
moment I saw that change, it changed something within me.
Mhm.
Because it was like literally when I saw that, I was like, oh, I don't have to be what my family wants me to be. I can be my own thing and create my own life. So I think like there is something also to be said of when you discover the whole sign house system versus Placidus and where those planets move in your life.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I was just curious about this topic.
Yeah. I think ultimately your birth chart, regardless of the house system, it is you. And so you're going to find like pieces of your story like threaded in there in some way. But I had the absolute same experience. The first time I put my chart in whole sign, I was like, ooh, it made me feel more badass. I was like, all these planets in the first house, excuse me. Before I was like, oh, I have a second house stellium.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel,
Boring.
yeah, it made me feel boring. I was like, okay, I like work. I don't know. Like when I was first starting out, I didn't really, have the interpretive skill to understand. But yeah, I did have that kind of like identity
Yeah.
shift.
Yes. And but then when I like furthered my study and I studied all these like predictive things
Mhm.
that use the whole sign house system, I was like, oh my God. And we go down rabbit holes. But if you're listening to this and aren't sure which house system to use or which house system, I would say look at both and see what resonates with you and
Yeah.
also how you feel about yourself, right? Because I don't know. There was something about moving from a fourth house sun to a fifth house sun that was just so liberating for me.
Yeah, I think I second that. It's so important to look at both charts because different things are going to stand out to you and it's still all you. You don't have to
Yeah.
pick one. You can go back and forth. Um, but But yeah, it's still all you. And I think that's the most important thing to remember.
Exactly. So do you have anything else you want to talk about for this week or the upcoming weeks?
Ooh, I think we just next week, like you said, April 11th is a beautiful, beautiful day. It's the Sun Jupiter conjunction that happens once a year. This is not going to happen in the sign of Aries for 12 more years. So take advantage of it. This is a special boost to the Aries sector of your chart. So if you do magic work, spell work, it's a really, really beautiful day to take advantage of the energy that's available to us.
And launch something
And
because it's
launch.
also an exalted sun.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And Stephanie and I are going to be launching something, so stay tuned for what that is.
We have something very exciting for you next week. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you soon. Take care.